mean, it is late and we are tired.
We are tired. We're parents.
Yes.
Welcome to Listen Up, the Buescher Bible podcast. I'm Samuel. This is my wife, Jessica. And we are talking about our 2 years of parenting. We did a podcast last year at this time where we talked about our first year of parenting and the experience that we had in it.
And then it's been a year since we posted anything.
No, it's not been a year since we posted anything. It's been almost a year since we posted anything. And I thought it was a really fun podcast. I enjoyed recording it. So I wanted to do a second year check-in of now it's been 2 years. And not only has it been 2 years, but we also have 2 children. And until a couple of days ago, it was 2 under 2. Yeah. Our oldest, she's 2, and our youngest is 9 months, and we don't have any other ones, thankfully, at this moment. So stick around with us to the very end because we have a special little bit of advice for anyone out there that has 2 kids under 2 years old, and we'll talk about that at the end.
Help us.
We need help. All right. So to start, do you want to start? Should I start? Last time you started because you did most of the work.
Oh, I did most of the work.
You did most of the work as far as raising Ketzel.
Producing for sure.
Producing, raising, all the things. I feel like you're still ahead of me as far as work goes.
Yeah. Well, my first thing that I put is you're going to need to ask for help a lot more with 2 than you did with 1.
It's true. And yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Well, all I was going to say is that a lot of the things that we are going to say do come from the place of us having 2 kids.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different for us than it is like even for my parents, because when my parents had me, I'm the second oldest. My older brother was already 2. So we have a little bit different perspective than they had. And their closest age gap between any of their kids was 17 months.
Which your mom has affectionately stated almost killed her.
Yeah.
And ours is 14
months
so
apart.
I am a shell of a human being. But we have made it out of the thick for sure.
For sure. So when we say these things, they are like 2 years of parenting, but they're also 2 years of parenting where for the last 9 months we have had 2 kids, not just 1.
Yes. Yes. So you're going to need to ask for help a lot. And it's really important to have those relationships in place before you have multiple children. I cannot tell you how many more times children get sick when they are just sneezing in each other's faces daily.
It's true.
Sometimes minutely.
It's true.
So we have been to the ER twice in the last 9 months. We've had our youngest on oxygen twice in the last 9 months.
Yep.
It has been bananas. I destroyed my shoulder and got the worst flu of my life.
Yep.
And if we didn't have friends and family close by, we would have been like struggling because it was 3 months of like nobody being well in our home.
It was crazy. We had this streak from
December.
the middle of December until February, March, where everyone was sick constantly except for me. I only got 1 cold in that period of time, and it was really great. Because then at least we had 1 parent that was alive.
Yeah. But when you're sick as a parent, also I saw this video that was like me being sick with kids and what was it, fantasizing about what it's like to be sick without kids, and you're like turning on the TV and like blowing your nose in a snuggly bed and not like mopping your floors and things like that. So you have to have friends who you trust with your kids, because there were times that they just ripped our daughter out of the house and took her to go do fun things while somebody was in the ER, and like we had friends praying for us all the time, and we have been like the I feel like number one supported family in our church
Yep.
currently, and we needed that. So that is my number one.
And I just want to piggyback on that real quick and say that applies to like every part of life. You need friends. You need your family. If you don't have friends and you don't have your family, then you need to make friends. And you
Good
need
ones
to,
that don't suck.
And you need to like grow your family, like the people that you would consider family, because it doesn't matter if you're single, if you're dating, if you're engaged, if you're married, if you're parenting. In all of those phases of life, you need friends, and you need people that are going to be like real friends who are going to be honest with you and say, yeah, she's a good person to date, or he's a good person to date. People that are going to say, wow, you're being an idiot right now, or like, dude, that was a super awesome job that you did over here. People that are going to lift you up when you're discouraged, and people who are going to enjoy life with you. Without those kinds of relationships, everything is super hard. And if you wait or like start dating and then cut off all of your friends because you're so obsessed with that other person, you are going to potentially put yourself into some really major pitfalls and just make some huge mistakes that you wouldn't have made otherwise if you had kept friends around. And then when you're married and you still need friends, you haven't cut off your relationships that you had previously. So you're able to continue those friendships. They change for sure.
For sure.
But they're still super important to have. And then make friends with married people too. And then you have kids and things change even more. But if you have those friendships and you are willing to maintain those friendships, you're going to reap a lot of really, really awesome fruit from those relationships.
Yeah, because at this point, we have given almost nothing back to our friendships.
Almost. That's not true. That's not true. But it does feel that way sometimes.
They've taken very good care of us.
They have. It's been great. My number one is that kids are a blessing. And I want to say this first in this point, because a lot of the time people say kids are a blessing, and then they're like, why is this blessing so hard? Or they say kids are a blessing, and then they just pretend like there aren't any problems with kids. They're like, oh, all of our relationships are so great when you see them. And then when they go home, they're like weeping in a closet and their kids have tied them up and like they're being held hostage.
No personal experience.
No personal experience on that one for sure. What's the sign? Is it this? What do you do?
I don't know.
If you're being like human trafficked
know,
and you like are in a video, you like there's some like hand sign.
No, I don't know any of these things.
Anyway, the difference between a curse and a blessing is predominantly perspective. Biblically, scripturally speaking, there are a lot of times that we're called to count persecution as a blessing and as a joy when we face trials and when we go through tribulations, because it produces in us such abundant, exceedingly good fruit. And I love Romans chapter 8. Romans chapter 8 is one of the best chapters in the Bible. It's the victory chapter, but it's victory over something. It's victory over defeat. It's victory over despair. It's victory over the grave. It's victory over persecution. How the passage ends is that verse that I think almost everybody knows, where it says, in all of these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. So that's how the passage ends. But some of the points in that passage are, for your name's sake, we are killed all day long. We are counted as sheep for the slaughter. But in all of these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. So it doesn't matter what our circumstances are. We're hyper conquerors over those circumstances. And that's the thing that we have that's different than the world. Because in the world, you're going to have tribulation. Doesn't matter if you're a believer, if you're Hindu, if you're an atheist, like all of us have hard things that we go through in life. But as believers, we're hyper conquerors over those things because we know that we're irrefutably loved by God. And all of those things have a purpose. In that passage, it also talks about how all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. Because Christ, God, has predestined us to be conformed to the image of his Son. So all things we can rejoice in because we know that they are producing the likeness of Christ in us. So parenting is a blessing, but if you let your perspective be warped on it, it is very easy for it to be a curse and to be counted as a curse. But it is truly a blessing. So how does it work as a blessing? I think some of the ways that it works as a blessing is that it really does develop your life. It changes your life. It makes you mature. It moves you out of a place of self-centeredness into a place of others focused. It strips you of a lot of your bad habits because you're confronted with the reality that you have to keep someone else alive who is constantly trying to end their own existence. And so, I mean, it's so true. But it develops your life. It moves you into so much better of a place than when you're just able to indulge in your own self-centeredness. Mm-hmm. And it really does develop you too, because you get to see some of the areas where you are weak that you thought you were strong. And then you are in a position where it is dramatically helpful to work on those areas and to grow and to change.
It's essential. It's like either we're all going to hate each other in 10 years or I'm going to have to work on this. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times when you're dealing with adults who like all know how to act.
Yeah.
And like the person who doesn't know how to save face in public and not make other people uncomfortable is like the weird one.
Yeah.
Like you never have to deal with those issues because you only get to a certain threshold of like somebody bothering you before you just go home and lock yourself in a room.
It's true.
But with kids, they don't know how to act at all. And actually, you are responsible for teaching them how to act, which is also concerning.
Yes. On top of they're actively trying to die. Like
all the time.
So
all the time.
You really can't lock yourself in a room for too
true.
long, because if you do, they might just fall off of the table.
And our pantry is so small, I couldn't even hide myself in there.
And with a 2-year-old, the capabilities.
She is so capable of destruction.
When Ketzel was 1, I thought she was pretty capable. I was like, wow, she's really got a lot of things down. But now she can climb up on top of a lot of things.
She climbed on our table
jump
today.
Off of a lot of things. She climbed on our table today.
First time she was trying to, she was trying to clean Micah and he was too far away. So she was trying to help, but also
crossing boundaries. Anyway, with a 2-year-old, way more capable of getting into things that they're not supposed to. Like she can reach a lot of our drawers now and open our drawers. We only have a couple of drawers that are child-proofed. And partly that's because we've taught Ketzel not to get into things that she's not allowed to get into. So like we are the child proofing, but she has the capability.
But she can reach knives on the counter now, and you really have to remember that.
Yeah. And like she's fully capable of sliding chairs across the floor if she really wants to and like getting into things. So potential is high.
Here's a 100% non-sponsored ad for buying a 1,200 square foot house because you can hear
everything. Yeah.
It is the best. And you're not going to clean it anyway with this many kids. So might as well have a small one.
Yep. It's true.
Pro parenting advice. Is my turn?
Your turn.
Okay. My next one is there is a time for letting yourself adjust to a new baby. And there's a time also that you need to get settled back into a new normal and just stop letting a new baby hold you back from the things that you're trying to do. We give ourselves 4 to 6 months. Like we did, I think with Ketzel, we didn't give ourselves that specifically. And I think with Micah, we were a little bit more like, before we all started getting sick, that was like our goal of like between 4 to 6 months or whenever they start sleeping through the night, like we have to start doing these things.
Yep.
Like at 6 months, I'm going to buy a pair of jeans. Doesn't matter what my body is doing. I have to buy a pair of jeans. I need something structured in order to like tell me where things are at. And I started waking up. I'm a morning person. Samuel is maybe not a morning person.
Nope.
And so I started waking up before the kids woke up once Micah was sleeping through the night, which wasn't until recently. But that means that I have to wake up at 5 a.m, between 5 and 5:30 if I want any alone time, because that's just how that is. But I feel like it's so easy when you have a new baby to not do the things that are good for you for a prolonged period of time because you're so tired, and you just have to get to like certain landmarks and decide that we are starting to do these new things that we know are good for us. For us, it's sleeping. Like once the kids are sleeping, we start adding more things into our lives. That, because I mean, when you're so sleep deprived, a lot of things just aren't even helpful yet.
It's true. And there's like a no cry it out sleep training. And I think we talked about it on the last one that we do. Super helpful. Highly recommend it. It's called Taking Care of Babies. I'll put a link in the description
Kara,
if you want to check them out.
You're the best.
Yeah, they're great.
If you
really does make a huge difference for us.
So big.
And I feel like if we only had one kid at this point, it would be significantly easier as far as the routines go. Because Ketzel at this point, like we've done a lot of really good stuff where Ketzel has a light that turns on in the morning at 7 a.m. She understands that she's not able to get out of her bed until that light turns on. So it really helps with our routine and with her routine to have those kinds of things. We have a lot of strategies as far as like food with her goes. Like if we're out and about and we know that we're going to be getting home in time just before she needs to take a nap or a couple of hours after she was supposed to have taken a nap, we pack her a lunch for the car so that she can eat that and then just go down to bed. So there's some of those things that like are harder and are good. Also, well, I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, with having two kids, it really disrupts that routine more. And every kid that you have, regardless of if you have, two as close as we did, or you have a 2-year-old and then like a 3-year-old, and then you have your next kid. I didn't say that well, but your routine is going to change, and it is really important to understand that, but also to be like, all right, we need to get back into consistent life again.
Yeah, not even like, again, a new normal. It's important to recognize that your life has changed.
Yep.
There are a lot of things that we cannot do to the same extent. But there are some things that are super important for us. If I don't get up before the kids 5 days a week is kind of how we set it out. If I don't get up those 5 days a week before the kids and they are waking me up in the morning, I am not well. And everything suffers for it. And so you just kind of have to figure out what sacrifices are good for your family and good for you as an individual, or else you will just suffocate. And you can't do that. It's a long, long game.
Definitely. And that ties into my next point really well of embrace the future. Because when I was single, I lived my life 1 week at a time, where I was like, all right, what am I doing this next week? Who do I want to hang out with? What's coming up? And I had a decent amount of purpose. I don't want to sound like I didn't plan anything ever, and I didn't have goals, but I didn't have the same level of drive that I could have had to actually accomplish things if I had been thinking about them from more of a long game perspective.
Yeah.
So I was much more about like this week to that week. I didn't really set like, all right, where do I want to be in 5 years? And then what are my like timelines? What do I have to hit in order to be able to make those things? But with a 2-year-old, And especially with 2 under 2, you really have to think about your goals from a 5-year perspective. And if you don't embrace the future, you're going to have life pass you by and you're going to have accomplished nothing. It's going to feel very demoralizing because you're going to look back and you're going to be like, wow, what even happened? Like, keeping your kid alive is a huge accomplishment.
It is huge.
So pat yourself on the back for that, because that actually is a really good thing that you did. But there's also other things that, like, time has moved on and you don't want to miss all of that time opportunity in that process. So you have to change your mindset to, like, okay, 5 years from now, where do we want to be in life? And what do we need to do to actually implement that? Because here's the thing, you're not going to accomplish anything big with a 2-year-old, and especially with 2 under 2. And maybe it's a little bit different with just one kid, but you're not going to accomplish anything major when your kids are, like, super small.
That's not necessarily true.
It's not necessarily true. But I think for the majority of people, they're
for
people,
us, we learned
all right,
that we
are not going to accomplish anything
needed
major.
to do less.
Yes.
And we needed to be focused on specifically the small things.
Yeah.
That we're going to compound.
Yes.
Because we weren't going to start a business.
No.
We weren't going to be doing all these things. I wasn't going to do a big career leap. Those things would not have happened in this year for us and had us be a functional family. That's what you mean by that.
That's what I mean by that. Yeah. And yes, it's a really good point of, like, other people are different than we are.
Other people are entrepreneurs and love it.
They could have done it.
Yeah.
But for us, so this is what we've learned.
Yeah.
Is that for us, that's not something that we can do. And for us, what we have to do is look 5 years into the future and say, in 5 years, where do we want to be? What do we want to have accomplished? What do we want our family to be like? And, you know, I went from looking at our house as like, oh, it's going to be a starter house. We're maybe going to be here 2 years max. So there's no point in investing a lot of time and energy into it because we're just going to be out of here so quick anyway. To now looking at our house from the perspective of, like, we could be here for 10 years. And what do I want this house to look like in 10 years? So
we're going to be fitting 2 bunk beds in the back room.
Yeah. So I've planted trees and we're, like, really trying to invest in the backyard because it's a smaller house. So our kids need that extra space to be able to play in. And we have, like, a playhouse back there and a trampoline now. And we're trying to really build more from that perspective of, like, okay, 5 years, like 5 years. What do we want? What do we need? And here's the thing is, like, you have to make them goals. There has to be, like, actionable points to them. Otherwise, you're never actually going to make it. You're going to say, oh, in 5 years, it would be great if this happened. But that's not a goal. That's a dream. Dreams are awesome to have. You can have as many dreams as you want. But goals are, this is what we are going to accomplish. And it's something that you actually lay a plan out for and you strategize together. And then you continue to implement and refine that goal and that plan to get you there.
Yeah, and something that we have recently started restarting is generally the last Friday of the month. We were pretty good at this when Ketzel was a baby because we only had one. But the first Friday of the month, we usually do, like, a date night in, where after we put the kids to bed, we go through the entire next month's calendar and the entire next month's goals for, like, what are we trying to accomplish? What's on that list of the 5-year plan, and what things can we actually do in this next month? What things can we do time-wise? What things can we financially afford? What things can we, like, feasibly get done, and when are we going to do them? And who are we going to see, and all that kind of stuff. And I know that a lot of people feel like that's really, like, a very unromantic way of living your life. But man, we were doing nothing before. We were doing nothing. We were getting to the end of a month of being like, we've seen no one and we've done nothing.
Yeah. We get to the end of the month and we were like, wow, we've watched 60 hours of Instagram reels this month.
That is not true.
I don't know. It could be. I mean, I have like a little like weekly check-in on my phone of like how much I use different apps. And it is kind of scary sometimes to be like, I was on that app for 6 hours this week. And when we first got married, it was like,
I mean, it was way more. We were in
yeah,
newly married life.
yeah,
I worked 3 days a week.
yeah. It was different.
Yeah, we spent our time terribly.
Yep.
But it's also, you know, we had kids pretty quick, so
It's true.
we got out of that rut pretty quick.
It's true. Embrace the future. This too shall pass. That's something I've learned is that like there's some really hard moments and months and it's like, but it's going to pass. It's not going to be this way forever. And having 2 kids is way different than having 1 kid from the perspective of with Ketzel, we were bored a lot. We were like, wow, this
day cannot go by slower.
How, like, what do you do? And now we're chasing, you know, like an 18-month-old around while the one that can't do anything is just
laying like a potato on the floor.
Yeah, chewing on random toys. So like, it's so different because you have less capacity to be bored because you have more activity in your sphere. So it'll pass.
Yes. Okay, my next one is you need to embrace your new limitations. I feel like we kind of covered that already, but there are things that you need to recognize as an individual, not as there are a lot of people who do a lot of things when their kids are really young, and I frankly do not understand it. I love that for them. We had to cut back on so many life things, and with the perspective of this is not forever. Like, I feel like for us, we do feel like the first 6 months especially are so challenging that for us, we have to kind of buckle down. And if we are doing more, we just end up like resenting our kids. And so that's not worth it for us. So we have to kind of pare back what we do in order to be able to enjoy our life. And even things like the physical limitations, like Samuel works a manual job, and so he needs to sleep. But I sleep in 2 days a week now because I just was not able to cope. And we had to figure out like our balance with everything where, you know, when Ketzel was little, I could sleep during her 2 very long daytime naps and it was fine. Yep. And so there's just new things that always come up. You have to check in with each other a lot to make sure that the other person is not falling apart.
It's true.
Necessarily, which you can tell, actually. That's not usually a check-in point. It's usually pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yep. The question is like, who's falling apart
who's
more
falling
sometimes?
apart more? There is that moment every once in a while where one person goes, I'm going to go lay down, and the other person's like, I'm just about to do that.
Yep. Yep. So true. Something I've learned over now 2 years of parenting is how important it is to grip gratitude. You really got to hang on to gratitude. But I think now about my parents and grandparents, and I had 2 grandparents pass away over this last year, and I am really thankful to my parents and grandparents, and even my great-grandparents and my great-great-grandparents, because they all sacrificed so much for me, for us, for my other siblings, for my whole family. I understand better now than I ever did before because I can empathize with it, how much my parents really gave to me. And they did a great job. My parents, I would say, are like above average parents. And They're definitely not perfect. And my grandparents, I would also say, were above average grandparents. And it's really such a huge blessing to have that legacy handed down to me. And they could have done so much worse. so much worse.
And it was not an accident.
Yeah.
Nothing that they did right was an accident.
But I remember growing up and saying like, I'll never do it that way when I have kids. And now I'm like, oh, they were just really tired. And there's something that's very healing about that, of like knowing that your parents weren't being malicious. They were just being human with their own human physical limitations. And the second part of gripping gratitude is like being thankful for our kids, because the heart follows gratitude. I feel like when you are thankful for somebody, it's so much easier to enjoy their presence. But when you're constantly complaining about them or annoyed with them, it becomes incredibly difficult to enjoy them. And that's not the attitude that I've wanted to have towards my kids. I really want to enjoy both of them, and both of them for who they are. And I'm seeing that currently with Micah is like, I know Ketzel really well, and Ketzel loves my attention, and she just like literally crawls all over me. But Micah, I haven't been able to give as much attention to, partially because of that. And I'm like, no, I need to have a really good relationship with both of them and choose to be grateful for both of them. And I've really been focusing on words of affirmation with both of them, just with the whole family, and like projecting good on them and making it something where it's like, I want our family culture to be one of mutual building up and not one of tearing down. And I know that it changes my heart towards them for good when I am being grateful for them, and when I'm praising them, and when I am pointing out those things that are actual genuine strengths in them. So yeah, it's been a really good thing.
Agreed. My next one is, you have to learn in this season that there is a place for growth, and there's a place for putting those little bowling alley bumpers up because you maybe don't have the capacity to grow. So a simple example, not the capacity, but a simple example for us is our family does not have a TV. We have our laptops that we can play shows on occasionally. We have our phones. So it's not like we are obviously devoid of electronics. Like, we are not those people. We are not above putting an occasional show about insects on for our child so that we can try to convince her that she can go outside without screaming. I did that today.
How'd that go?
It was fine until we went outside. But we don't have a TV, not because we are trying to be on like a moral high ground, but because we know that it would be so easy for us to just zone out and to not want to have to engage with our family. Yeah. And we are both that way. And we had that from the beginning, like from the start of our marriage. Did somebody tell us not to get a TV, or did we just not have one? And so we were just
even before we got married, I basically didn't have a TV.
Yeah. And so we just never had it. And like, we held that loosely. Like with Ketzel, I feel like we were really strict about like, we don't want to do any screens until 2. And then we had another baby 14 months later, and we were like, oh, okay, maybe we can't do no screens until 2.
Just very occasional screens.
We tried, and we did, I feel like, a very good job of intentionally using screen time on occasion.
And even then, we did like a media fast as a whole family, and it was a really good thing.
It was. Yeah, so there are places where you're going to have to grow, and there are places where you are not going to have the capacity to grow, and you're just going to be like making everyone miserable just because you don't want to get rid of the thing. So you just have to learn what those things are. If you feel like garbage when you eat gummy bears, you might just not be able to have gummy bears around the house. And that might be fine. Yeah. So there are things like that that you just have to very much recognize that there is a capacity limit for how much you can grow outside of the fact that you are raising human beings.
Yes. I feel like a lot of my advice so far has been more cerebral and less practical.
Oh, yes.
But I'm going to bring a very practical one. And every single good parent that I've talked to says this is super important. And we talked about it last time as well. And I think that it's probably going to be something that I talk about every single year that we do this. You got to be consistent. You got to be consistent because it's going to keep you sane and it's going to make them better. You have to be consistent. And I am the worst one out of the two of us.
We are very opposite. It's not always good either way.
But I was talking to one of my coworkers about this the other day because you like Ketzel. I love Ketzel and she's such an amazing person, but she is incredibly particular. And if we were not consistent with her, she would rule our house.
Oh my gosh.
She would absolutely dominate us. It would be the most miserable relationship
I've never been bullied
possible.
so much in my life, and I was bullied a fair bit.
And it would just crash and burn. Like everything would crash and burn. We would hate parenting. We'd be pulling our hair out constantly. She would hate us. She would eat so much sugar. She would be insane. She would never go to bed. She would scream. She would hit us. Like all of the things that you think about when you think about terrible twos, she would be that thing. But because we've been pretty dang consistent.
Oh my gosh, we have. Yeah.
And we've set up good boundaries. It's been something where we enjoy being around each other most of the time. Like she's in a phase right now where I feel like, I don't know what it is, but it seems like life is just falling apart right now for her. Anytime she gets a scratch, but it's like within an acceptable range instead of it being the end of our lives. And it's because we've been consistent. And man, if you are a parent and you cannot stick to your word, then your life as a parent is going to be miserable. Like it is probably better to never talk about discipline than to tell your kids, if you do that one more time, this is going to happen, and then not follow through. Mm-hmm. Like you have to be consistent. And if the behavior is bad enough that you feel like you need to bring a discipline, it's probably because it is. And choose to embrace that rather than letting fear keep you from actually cultivating like a good relationship with your kids and a healthy human being.
Yeah. And I feel like also the other side of that is, even though Ketzel is only 2, there have been several times where I have said something was going to be a consequence that was not reasonable for whatever action it was or whatever. And like, even with her being 2 and under 2, I have had to like verbally backtrack and like let her know that what I told her I was going to do was not reasonable. Yeah. So instead we're going to do this thing. And I don't know if it's as much for her as it is just for me of gaining that habit, because I can be super regimented with the kids and overly regimented. And so because of that, I can just be like, I'm going to throw everything that you have away if you do this thing. And like, rather than just acting like nothing happened and like you never said it, I really had to be like, no, that wasn't really reasonable.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do instead. And verbally letting her know of those things. I don't know how much she's taking in, but just the practice of having that shift happen in front of her rather than just being like, oh, that's not really going to happen. I'm not really going to burn our house down. Samuel hears all of those ones.
Yeah, but that's a really good point.
We have a townhouse, so that would be really rude to our neighbor.
Because I should bring that like in conjunction with what I said of like, then there probably needs to be some sort of a boundary and discipline of like, there are inappropriate disciplines though. Mm-hmm. So just because a discipline needs to be enforced doesn't mean that you can enforce it any way that you want to, because really it's about what's the best thing to do and what's the best kind of discipline to bring. And yeah, you may need to walk it back and learn those boundaries. And this is where going all the way back to Jessica's first point of having friends is so important, because there need to be people in your life that when you look at their kids, you're like, wow, I want our kids to be like theirs when they grow up. And those are the people you go to for parenting advice. You don't talk to your friends that aren't even married and ask them how you should be handling a situation with your kids. They might be wonderful and they might be very mature.
And maybe they'll give a good perspective on ways they were parented and how it affected them now as an adult. And you can take all of those things in as information.
Yes. But they're not going to speak into your life in an authoritative way enough that you're going to really listen to them. Mm-hmm. And secondly, it's all theory crafting. It's not all theory crafting, but for them, it's theory crafting because it's head knowledge. It's not experiential knowledge.
I mean, we were incredible parents before we had kids.
Yeah, I mean, we were the best parents before we had kids. We had so many. Man, I'll tell you what, the number of times that I like was single and I looked at a kid and I was like, wow, that kid really needs a bath. Their parents should do something about that. And now, after 2 years of parenting, I'm like, man, praise the Lord, my kid's got a bath this week. That's so good. Like, we were the best parents before we had any kids. We knew exactly what we were and weren't going to do. It all worked out so well in our minds.
Oh, so well. Yep. Is it my turn?
Yep.
Okay. My last point is who you have kids with matters.
Yes.
A lot.
We keep saying marriage, and for really good reasons, but I won't cut you off anymore.
It's just so important. I cannot stress enough how boring our lives are in the sense of we do not have a volatile relationship.
Yeah.
We have been snippy with each other. We've been exhausted. We have had 2 kids, 14 months apart. I am not the happiest pregnant or postpartum person. We have, like, there are so many circumstances in life that could cause us so much grief if it weren't for the fact that we are so well balanced in our relationship with each other, in our relationship with the Lord, in our individual relationship with friends.
Yep.
We didn't have kids until we got married, and that is a huge thing.
We didn't have sex until we got married.
It's a huge thing to have such a stable relationship that doesn't have this volatile side of it.
Yep.
And I think it's really easy when, I don't know from your perspective, I feel like as somebody who's a little more up and down, who has a little bit more of a tendency for volatility, maybe, it's really easy to be attracted to that in partners, not thinking of the long game of, yeah, but you have to live with this person. You have to raise kids with this person. You have to talk
about budgeting with this person.
You have to talk about budgeting a lot. You have to talk about budgeting. You have to.
Or you just go into massive amounts of debt and screw up your whole life.
Yeah, or you could do that. It's one of those things where you have to really weigh your entire life in front of you before you get married, before you have kids with somebody. And I heard somebody say the other day, if you are already in relationship counseling before you get married, you should just break up.
Yeah, don't do it.
And it's so true. Not you're getting advice from people. Like, if your relationship is so volatile, like, it's just maybe isn't a good fit. Everyone told us our first year of marriage was going to be awful. And it was great. And it, like, we had to figure things out about each other. And there's obviously things that we've been married almost 4 years. So there's, like, we're still newly married, quote unquote. But there was so much room in this season for us to come out of this as, like, roommates who hated each other.
Yeah, for sure.
And, like, who just built up resentment for it. Because you always are going to feel like you are doing more than the other person when you're in such a tired state.
For sure.
You are going to lie to yourself and tell yourself that they never or they always in all of these different scenarios. And a lot of times you just need to be married to somebody who you can talk to and say, I am dying, please help me. And so that is just super important.
A baby's not going to save your marriage.
A baby is not going to save anything.
Yeah, no.
They're so cute and squishy and a lot of work.
Yes. Yeah, I really want to touch on that. I know that this is about parenting, but I keep going back to dating relationship advice for some reason. So we didn't have sex before we got married. And after getting married and having sex, it was like, wow, this really is incredibly bonding. And you're so vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And you put yourself out there and you connect on such a deep level. And we talked about this right after we got married. We were like, man, if we were dating somebody that was like trash or mediocre or just like not the right person, but we had already started having sex with them, it would be so hard to break off that relationship and end up marrying somebody that it's really not a good fit to marry.
Yeah.
And we are full believers in, like, when you're married, it, like, that seals it. Like, you're married. Outside of the, like, very specific things that scripture says nullify a marriage, like, there's no room for divorce. There's no grounds for it because, one, totally disregards God's heart. Totally perverts the purpose and the meaning of marriage. It destroys kids, just absolutely overturns families. Brings economic ruin. There's so many things that divorce brings that are negative compared to the supposed benefits of divorce. That is just biblically it's untenable. In reality, it's unprofitable. And the whole thing that I'm saying with that is that wherever you are with your marriage, in Christ, it has the potential to be your best marriage that it possibly could be. But how you start your relationship and marriage matters. And the better foundation you have going into marriage, the better off your marriage is going to be. Every marriage has the potential to become diseased. So you have to maintain and take care of that marriage. But every marriage also has the potential to flourish. So again, wherever you are, like, your marriage has high potential to flourish. So if you're in a really bad spot in your marriage, like, take heart, because even though you're trapped, like, you're trapped with exceeding hope. So if you're single, if you're dating, if you're engaged, and you're listening to this, you're not trapped yet. So make sure the person that you marry is the person that you're like, I want this person to hold our kids. I want this person to raise our kids. I want this person to train our kids. I want this person to be the person that I die next to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like we have become almost the like, not the anti-advocates of marriage. That's not what I'm trying to say. But the huge advocates of when we sit down with people who are dating, we're not like, we're so happy for you. Like, we're not trite. We're not putting on like this, like, love is all you need, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because
love is not all you need.
Yeah.
And infatuation is often mistaken for love.
Yeah. And you just have the ability to really be so selective and so wise with who your parents or your children's father is going to be, who your children's mother is going to be. And what a beautiful thing to have them be brought up in a house that is like founded on a stable relationship. It's so good. And I know that it feels really hard when other people are married, especially in the Christian community. People get married really young and a lot of the time. And so you can feel like really left out. Like my best friend was married for almost 10 years before I got married. Mm-hmm. And it's just one of those things that you're like, but I am choosing what is best, because the absolute ache of being in a horrible marriage is not worth like filling this FOMO void in you.
Yeah. So everything that we're talking about really like, well, no, it's not. Everything that we're talking about actually ties directly into my last point. So my last point is harmony and health. Like your harmony and health. Well, the harmony and health of your marriage. That's the right way to say it. That's what people do when they speak English. The harmony and health of your marriage is pivotal. Like absolutely pivotal. So having your marriage be your primary focus is like almost right. Like your relationship with the Lord should be your primary focus, but then like nothing should be as important as your marriage.
Mm-hmm. Including your kids. As like your kids are going to take up a lot more time and a lot more attention than your marriage, but that doesn't mean that they have to be more important.
And this is where I feel like over this last year, this has really gotten hammered home to me from the standpoint of people, and I would say primarily women. I could be wrong. Maybe I should take that back. People.
I don't know what you're going to say, but I'm already offended.
People struggle with letting go of their kids.
Oh, yeah. You can say women for that. That's probably pretty standard. Because
there's a lot of things that women are incredibly good at. We'll go back to women for a quick second. And nurturing is one of them. Like that is one of their primary driving factors. I believe. I could be wrong.
I'm just like, maybe not personally.
Yeah. It's nurturing. And a lot of women and men too, but a lot of women are like, when I have kids, I want to create this environment. And it's going to be this thing. And we're all going to love each other so much. It's going to be so bonding. And then they have all of these like super specific things. And for some couples it works, and for some couples it doesn't. And you just need to be able to put those things on the altar of your marriage. Like co-sleeping. Okay? Co-sleeping, I think for some people is great.
Yeah, we're not
anti co-sleeping.
Do it safely.
Yeah. We don't co-sleep. And part of anyway, if you don't know what I'm talking about, this will be a little bit over your head for a quick second. So part of that for us is because I want to, it's for us. It's for our relationship 100%, because I want to be able to sleep in the same bed as my wife and both of us just like have that space protected and guarded. And I don't want to have to fight over it with a kid. Ketzel, for the first time in 18 months, like woke up in the middle of the night and wouldn't go back to sleep.
Almost 2 years. No, she's never slept
So
in our
we
bed.
brought her into our bed because we were like, maybe she's at this point where this is a good thing. So for the next hour and a half, Ketzel like flip-flopped in our bed. She like crushed me with her body, like just like literally like pressed into me with her body. Then like she
slapped me in the face.
Yeah, she slapped Jessica in the face. She started dropping stuffed animals on this side of me and on that side of me and in this side of Jessica and that side of Jessica. We were like, Ketzel, it's time for bed. We told her that like 15 times. She was like, okay. We were like, lay down. She's like, can we go to the living room? We're like, no, it's the middle of the night. All of that to say that I know it's different if babies co-sleep from the time that they're babies.
Totally.
But that is not good for our relationship.
Yeah, and I really wanted to co-sleep. I wouldn't say I really wanted to. I wanted to. And that was one of the things that you were pretty hardcore like, I don't think this is going to be good for us.
Yeah.
And after, especially with taking care of babies and not having to do cry it out because I didn't want to do that as a sleep training method, especially after that, now being able to have to be able to put our kids in bed and have our own space and our own time is actually really important for us.
Yeah.
And has been like a cornerstone of our relationship. Even if we're just doing the dishes and cleaning up the house, being able to like lay in bed next to each other in just silence and rest, it has been really good. And that's something that like we had to do for our relationship.
Yep. And there are some things that just don't work for every couple. And I think what's really unfortunate right now in the parenting community is that we have a very judgmental attitude of like, if you don't co-sleep with your kids, I'm going to just pick on co-sleeping because there's a ton of other things out there that I could bring up. And you probably know what I'm talking about.
And people already hate us for co-sleeping stuff, so it's fine.
Yeah. You probably know what I'm talking about. Like, there's probably things that are coming up in your mind right now that you're like, well, whatever. But anyway, so what was I even going to say? Anyway, that with co-sleeping, like, it was just, a no for us because it wasn't going to be healthy for our relationship. But I have seen people that, like, with co-sleeping, they're like, well, if we don't co-sleep, then our kid isn't going to like us. Mm-hmm. And they are so fear-driven in their parenting that it's like they have to have this bond with their kid. And then it's like, well, you have a 4-year-old now that you have a really close bond with, but you have a spouse that doesn't know who you are anymore. Mm-hmm. That's not good. And here's the other thing too, is like, it may work great with one kid. And then when you get to 2 kids, you have to recalibrate.
Totally. And that's with everything.
And and it's like totally fair for that to happen. It is fair because it's necessary. Mm-hmm. Like when you have 2 kids, and then you have 2 kids trying to co-sleep, because with us having our kids so close, it would have been in that time frame that we would have been trying to have 2 kids in our bed at the same time to maintain some sort of like mythical relationship with them that is wholly predicated on co-sleeping. Like it would have really driven a deep wedge between us. Mm-hmm. It would have sucked a lot of joy out of our marriage. Mm-hmm. So you have to, as a parent, be able to say, these are my ideal things. Mm-hmm. These are the things that we know are incredibly important. Consistency is one of those things, right? Like anyone that tells me that they don't believe in disciplining their child, I'm like, well, you believe in the destruction of your child then. Like that's like a non-negotiable. But I don't care if you use gentle parenting or if you do timeouts or whatever form of discipline that you have, as long as it's appropriate mm-hmm. for the event that requires discipline, right? I don't care what that thing is, as long as it works for your kid. Mm-hmm. Like
Not for you.
Not for you, but for your kid.
kid.
So, but if you say like, no, discipline isn't necessary for our kids, you just want your kids to fail at life. Like 100%. You want to be so liked by your kids that you are not willing to jeopardize that relationship in any way, shape, or form, even to their own destruction. But other things like co-sleeping, I think that those are things that are like, sure, however your kid, however you want to navigate your kid's sleep journey, that's fine until it starts destroying your marriage.
And maybe have a little bit of foresight.
Maybe you get to the point where you're like, wow, this might destroy our marriage. And then maybe it's time to readjust. But like the marriage is more important.
Yeah.
You know? So you have to have health and harmony in your relationship. You also have to have health and harmony in yourself. Like if you're physically falling apart, super hard to parent because you're parenting from a state of exhaustion and you're going to do a lot of things that you end up regretting. If you're not mentally in a place of harmony and health, like same thing. If you're spiritually not in a place of harmony and health, same thing. So be willing to change, but be also aggressive about maintaining your health so that blessings can flow from you to all of the people that are around you.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed with health and not working out because I was pregnant for 2 years and all those kinds of things. Now I am definitely feeling the fact that I'm like, oh wow, I don't want to keep up with our toddler. Like there's this barrier of I feel so physically like not at my peak is not the right phrase, but like I don't feel like I can match her even remotely in her energy right now. And we're not unhealthy people. It's not like we're sedentary. I'm not a particularly sedentary person, but your physical capabilities and your physical health, especially like the things that you can control about it, not the things that are outside of your control about your physical health, but your physical health that you can control really does change how you view the craziness that is your child, because we have a super high energy toddler and she's a girl. And so I don't think that I expected that necessarily from a girl, because everyone told us that like boys are bananas and that girls are chill, and she has been bananas.
Yeah.
But we also don't want her to lose that part of her because it's such an important part of who she is.
And it would be really easy to crush.
Yeah, because it'd be so much more convenient. And so really I have to be able to be at a place where I can match her energy for energy in a lot of circumstances. So that is something that can flourish and not die out because I'm lazy and tired.
So if you've made it all the way to here,
bless you.
Bless you. And you have 2 under 2. This is what I want to say to you. First off, you've probably heard a lot of our advice, and hopefully it's applicable to you, because we definitely are speaking out of the place of 2 under 2. In our 2 years of parenting.
I know, we just graduated.
Yeah, just graduated. So it's like, wow, the exact same world still.
Nothing.
6 months from now, I think we'll be like, wow,
Micah
it's
crawls
so
now, so it does
Micah
feel
does
pretty
crawl.
different.
It is, yeah, that is actually
it's
a
the
fact.
Best. Don't let people tell you that a crawling baby is worse. It's way better.
Yeah, Micah has been crawling now for like a week, and we're like, oh, praise the Lord.
Finally.
Anyway, we believe in you. Like, you can do it. I know it's incredibly difficult. Mm-hmm. So be encouraged. Like, you can do this. And the Lord knew what he was doing when he gave you 2 under 2.
Because it probably wasn't planned.
Probably wasn't planned. The Lord has something special for all of your kids. And, like, take heart. We believe in you. Secondly, is If all you have is love, it's enough, because your house is going to be a disaster more than your friends with one kid.
Correct.
Your house is going to be more of a disaster probably than your friends that have 2 kids with a decent age gap in between them. There are a lot of things that are just probably falling apart around you right now. And that's okay if you have love. Like, cultivate a home of love, because it is far better to dwell on the corner of a roof than in a home filled with contention and strife. Doesn't matter if it's full of fine food and expensive clothes and all these other things that you probably don't have because you have 2 under 2. It is better to have love. So there's some things for this season that are just going to die, but they're going to be like seeds that are sown into the ground, and later on they're going to sprout and grow, and you'll be able to reap those things again. But at this moment, just focus on love, like having a house where you love your spouse, you love your kids, they love you, they know that they're loved, you're consistent. Don't hear that. That means don't discipline your kids, because that's not where love actually abides. But I think you understand what I'm saying of love. Like, it's okay if there's stacks of dishes sometimes at night, and it's okay if the floor is not swept every day and the house isn't mopped every minute and the vacuum hasn't come out of the closet in 3 months. It's okay. Like, we believe in you. You're going to do it.
You're going to make it. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Thanks for listening.
We appreciate it.
Make sure you like and subscribe. Is that what that is?
It's true. Yes.
And also
even comment.
Leave us comments, because we would love that.
And I reply
You do.
I do reply in 1 to 6 weeks on comments.
But we don't have any babies on the way, and so we should be able to be a little bit better about communication. Hopefully. But leave us a comment, because we love that. We want to be able to talk to you. Tell us what your age gap on your kids is. Mm-hmm. And if you have any great advice for us, that would be great too.
Yes.
We'll put it in the Rolodex.
Yeah.
That's a throwback, isn't it? A Rolodex.
They were really useful. And still useful in offices.
I went through my parents' Rolodex all the time looking for Grandma Joy's phone number.
So fun. I just spun it and just watched them
ours
things flop.
Wow. Were we in different tax brackets?
No. Well, actually, yeah, you guys probably made a lot more money than my parents did.
Ours were just little index cards.
It's because your mom's so thrifty. That's the real reason.
Well, bye. Oh.